Okay, something I can talk about that I know about. Um, in the winter of 1972, I took a course in Zoology 1, Introduction to Zoology, at Central Missouri State College, I think it was then, in Orangeburg, Missouri. And we looked at we had to prepare these slides of live amoeba. Little one-cell creatures. So we went over to this tub, or this jar, big jar, like a Culligan water jar, and it about 5 gallons of water, and you just reach down in there with an eyedropper and get a drop of water and put it on the glass slide, and take the other glass slide and put it on top of the other glass slide, and that's preparing the slide for viewing. Then we took it over and put it under the microscope, and you look around, adjust the dials and see if you can find the amoeba. Well, I found it. And I'd seen these little critters before in biology lab. And so after looking at him for a while, I thought, well, I wonder if there's anything else in this, in there with him, or her, as the case may be. Actually, I don't know what they call them. They reproduce by dividing. They don't really have sex. That's the life of an amoeba. But anyways, I observed this process. I think is known as recrystallization. In other words, like salt. You put salt into water, and at first it all dissolves. But as you keep adding salt, pretty soon there's so much, the solution becomes what they call saturated, a saturated solution, and then the salt begins to recrystallize, and so it gathers at the bottom of the glass or whatever, and it goes back to its original condition, or its condition of being a solid rather than a liquid. And that's a complicated process. Even with table salt, it's a complicated process chemically, but it's not that complicated. Anybody can understand it, but I'm not going to get into it. But what I observed was not salt. It was a salt of some kind. I don't know. That's kind of the mystery of this video, or of that event. Pardon me while I smoke up the room. And so I observed this process. These little white particles began to snow out. I mean, I couldn't see the shape of the particles except that they were white and very small, much smaller than an amoeba. And they made a flow, and they formed these crystals. And the sort of unexplained event was that they formed little crosses, like the Christian cross, only they had a diamond end on them. If you look at my Cross of War channel on YouTube, you'll see a primitive illustration in color of the shape of the crosses, and of course it's much larger on my YouTube background page. But these were much smaller than amoeba, and they were all white, and they were, of course, perfectly geometrical. And I would say there were about 12 to 15 of these little crosses that formed. And so I was kind of intrigued by that, and so I informed the lab instructor of of what I had observed, and so he came over and he looked at it. And he thought it was interesting enough that he had the other students in the lab come around, and they all looked at it as well. At the end of the lab, I washed them down the drain. I never really thought, well, that's interesting. And I went down to the library there in Warrensburg, the library, which was not a library at all. It was the name of a local dive, a local bar, where I spent most of my time drinking, and was going to school just as a more or less on the GI Bill. The going to school was a way to support my habit of drinking, and I didn't really have a goal of what was I going to be when I grew up. I was mostly trying to forget about my experiences in Vietnam. I guess. I mean, who knows? I mean, I eventually quit drinking. And quit college and all the rest of it. And I see I got about 3 minutes here. I'm going to have to make a part 2 or 3 or whatever of this video. And so the question is, what were those crystals made out of? What were they really, and why is that event not, it's not reported in the literature that I can find? I've asked a lot of people. They haven't observed these crosses. One chemistry head of a chemistry department at, I believe it was the University of Las Vegas, New Mexico, that told me that I might never. It might have been the university chemistry professor at University of Montana. I don't know. It was some university professor, head of a chemistry department, said I might never find those crosses again. And everybody says, repeat the experiment. Well, I'll continue this in part 2. Over and out.